We will go over to Netflix and we are going to talk about the 6888. When I say we, I mean Sharon. Sharon, this is what you
Okay.
came here for. You have to talk about the six. You sat down there patiently listening, and it's now time to talk about the 6888. So please go.
Okay. The six triple eight. I always get the name wrong. I'm sorry. Is a Netflix film. It is set in the Second World War, and it is about a this company, the six triple eight, which is a don't know how what the hell they describe it on there. But I don't want to use that the archaic language, but it's basically a unit of black women.
Yes.
How these women who have felt the call to sort of do war work through whatever circumstances. Sometimes it's one of them. It's because she's just wants to serve her country. Others they want to do it because it's like it gets them out of their lives because they've sort of been living at working menial jobs and they see it's an opportunity to sort of do something different to serve their country and have a bit of adventure.
Hmm.
Maybe meet some men in also in this armed forces. And for another one, it's because she wants answers. She's her the love of her life has gone into the forces, and she's just lost track of what's happened to him. He's missing, presumed dead, but she doesn't know that, and so she wants answers, and she wants to find a way of fulfilling the promise that that was in their relationship. So there's all these women come from a different path, but they're all women who are from the black background. They have different social economic backgrounds. Some of them are very well educated, they're college educated. Others are just ordinary girls who are just working sort of as maids and as waitresses and things. So they've all joined up, and they find more or less immediately that they are treated differently, that even though they've trained and they've qualified, they're not being deployed, they're not being used, they haven't left America, and they're somehow regarded as being they want them there, but they don't know what to do with them. The army says like it wants to boast that they've got this black unit of women soldiers, but they just don't know what to do with them. And then they have discovered there is a crisis in the postal system within the army, that mail is not being taken from the front line and delivered to the home, and home mail is not actually been delivered to the troops. And they've had this enormous backlog that amounts to something like 17 million pieces of mail that fills like hangars, aircraft hangars in these sacks. And these are lifelines to the soldiers and their lifelines to the families left behind. And they their commanding officer has been given the job of sorting this out, but they've almost been like set up to fail. It's like an impossible task. So who would you give an impossible task to? The people who have basically who you think is assume that because every other unit's failed, you've got to give it to someone because the president is pestering them about it, because the first lady is pestering people about it, because mothers and sweethearts have been saying, like, I've not heard from my son for 3 years and I'm desperate to hear what's happening to them. And so the pressure's been put on the army. So they say, well, who can we give it to? Oh, just give it to them. And
Yeah.
so these women are then shipped out to Britain, and they go by sea, unescorted, cross the North Atlantic, in a civilian boat. So again, not treated they would treat combat troops or even any other administrative troops. They're shipped out and they arrive in Scotland in the sort of the middle of winter, freezing cold, and they're told they've got to march to their accommodation, and their accommodation is a requisitioned school. Um, of anyone in this country, when you hear the sort of Scottish boarding school, you probably have an idea of what they walk into. This sort of glacial, inhospitable, sort of quite primitive conditions, which toughen up the young men of this country. And that's
Yeah.
what they were sent to do for years, but maybe not quite what some sort of southern women are expecting when they come to serve their countries. So they
Yeah.
have this mammoth task of like their accommodations are just not fit for purpose, so they have to sort of get in there and sort it out. And then this task of like sorting out the mail when none of the previous systems that have been set up are actually working. So they have
Yeah.
to like identify, solve problems, and then sort of fight for their place. And that's what you do. You see it through the eyes of the different women in this unit and their commanding officer, and then how some of the army and some of the other people involved, some of the families who are waiting for mail, some of the you get to see these different lives.
All right. All right. So, when I first heard about this film sounded to me like, it has a lot of the trappings of Oscar bait. Of of Oscar bait. Like it looked like, if you remember the film Hidden Figures from a couple of years ago, it looked a
Yeah,
little bit like Hidden Figures,
there is,
but
yeah, there are
yeah,
nods to that, I think.
all right, cool. So, but then I saw it was directed by Tyler Perry, and I'm like, okay, in that case, I don't think it's Oscar bait because Tyler Perry is very much a populist filmmaker.
Probably,
Doesn't,
yeah.
yeah, I don't think he particularly cares about awards. So, what would you say on that? Like, how does the film come across as worthy, or what is it?
So, yeah, I would say that the what I was thinking of, yeah, when you think of it, yes, it's I think it's done to entertain, to outrage, but I think effectively it's like a piece of entertainment. And so
Oh yeah,
you follow these stories through, like you follow one particular woman through her story of, basically wants to find out what the love of her life is. And every now and then he wrote her a letter. As it turned out, it's not really a spoiler because it's that sort of film where you can't really spoil it. You go into it knowing what you're going to get. But anyway, his last letter, you basically chart it through the journey as they're unraveling this problem. You see his letter at different stages that it was, she hadn't heard from him, and his last letter has been trapped in this mail system,
mm,
and she's been left in this limbo because she doesn't know what he was thinking of about her before
yeah.
the end of his mission. So, no, I liked it. Again, I thought sometimes it was a bit sentimental, but I think this is a sort of film that appeals to that sort of sentimental aspect of it. My only criticism is because it's an American film, it's very self-contained. It's all about so it's only with it you only see it through the window of what they see. So you only see it through the eyes of the women there.
Yeah.
When you actually look, because I'm always curious about true stories, how true are they? And when you read some of the accounts of some of the women, they actually were quite well received by the local communities. They were invited to people's homes. They went to the people, got to know them, people welcomed them, and a lot of them were saying like they were treated much better in Scotland than they were at home in some of their circumstances.
Yeah.
But you don't see any of that. You don't see them
Because
outside of the confines of their barracks, basically. So you never see the interactions with the locals. You never see the interactions with the wider community,
well,
which I
it is.
think would have been interesting for me.
Yeah, I always find that with films like this, people make this film and there's a certain story they want to tell, and there's a very certain thing they want to go in, and they want to, and
Yeah,
so when you see this thing and you think, oh yeah, you're going to look at a whole bunch of black women who were serving the army during World War II. Straight away, you think, right, cool, racism. This is a racism story.
there's a lot of racism in it.
Yeah, and if that's the case, if that's a racism story, you want to focus on the fact that it's a racism story, and you want to cut out anything that detracts from the racism story. So
Yeah,
I always find these sort of films as a good, they're like a good, they because they're good to make highlight an area that you don't know about. Then you can go and like you have done, Sharon, do your own research and find out. So they're just kind of like oh, by the way, this happened, and then you go and
yeah.
find out exactly what happened. But don't go to them and expect
To
historical
have the whole
fidelity.
story.
Yeah,
No. And so they do say this is, these are real women. Some of them they have, like, this is real woman, and you get pictures of the real person and their lives, and you think, well, that would have. But yeah, I thought on the whole, I thought it was entertaining. It was so yeah, and I know because I didn't realize there was, sort of black women posted in Britain during the Second World War.
yeah,
Obviously there were black men posted in this country with different the pioneer corps and different other things. Not that I don't think we're pioneers, but sorry, excuse me if that's not the right term. But yeah, I was aware that there were black troops based in this country. Um, quite well, that's quite well known here.
yeah,
But I didn't know this story at all, so I thought that was interesting. I think on the whole, yeah, I liked it. I spoke to some of my friends at work, said, "Oh, did you see this film over Christmas?" And I was like, "Well, yes, I did actually." And said, "Well, we really liked it." So I think there's a lot to like about it. I think it wouldn't be any more than a 3 for me, but I thought
mm,
it was entertaining, quite well acted. The characters were engaging enough that you think, actually, if I find any more, I'd like to find out a bit more about them, which is what I
yeah,
did.
yeah.
And it opens a sort of a little window on the Second World War that I wasn't aware of. So for me, I enjoyed it. Would recommend people watching it, but I probably wouldn't give it more than a 3 in terms of like artistic merit. But it's certainly entertaining, for what it was. But yeah, it's worth checking out.
All right, so 3 stars for the 6 triple eight.